I call the Assembly Committee of the Whole for August 4th, 2025 to order at 6:01. Ms. Hughes-Scandies, would you read the land acknowledgement, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We would like to acknowledge that the City of Borough-Juneau is on unceded Tlingit land and wish to honor the indigenous people of this land. For more than 10,000 years, Alaska Native people have been and continue to be integral to the well-being of our community. We are grateful to be in this place, a part of this community, and to honor the culture, traditions, and resilience of the Tlingit people. Gunoshish.
Ms. Ms. Hendricks, would you please note the roll?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. Mr. Bryson.
Present.
Ms. Hughes-Scandies.
Here.
Ms. Wall.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Ms. Adkisson.
Here.
Mr. Steininger.
Here.
Ms. Hall.
Here.
Mayor Weldon is absent, and you have quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Hendricks. Any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll note the agenda as approved. May I have a motion to approve the two sets of minutes? Ms. Hall.
I move we approve the minutes from 5/12/2025 for Special Assembly Committee of the Whole minutes and 7/14/2025 Committee of the Whole, and ask for unanimous consent.
Seeing no objection, those minutes are approved. Thank you, Ms. Hall. On to our agenda topics. Our first one is the consideration of a shelter safety zone. The last committee of the whole, we asked to get more information back. We have a memo, but maybe Mr. Barr, or if you'd want to do any introduction or highlights, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can do that, and hopefully you can hear me. I sound extremely loud in my ears, but I know the challenges of this room. So, yes, highlights a long, somewhat dense memo in your packet that summarizes, the latter half of the memo rather, summarizes some shelter safety zone concepts that other communities have approached. I think it's important to note that, and in the front of the memo, on the third paragraph, I talk a little bit about this, that our municipality is not the only municipality who has been confronted with this topic recently. We give credit to Attorney Wright for finding this article for me, but there was a good quote in the Journal of Sociology and Social Welfare that rang true for us. That, with cuts to social services that we've been seeing at the federal and state levels, but really mainly at the federal level over the years, that really has driven, at least from where we sit and from somewhere of our providers sit, our providers in the community that support this population, have exacerbated this challenge. And I'll just note a sentence that I personally felt compelled to include, which is that over the past decade, which encapsulates essentially my time at the City and Borough of Juneau, this assembly and past assemblies have been increasing funding and increasing support to providers who support this community, as well as the community directly, and in a variety of ways to try to address homelessness at a very rapid pace compared to inflation and really compared to whatever metric you want to track it under. But those efforts don't appear to have outpaced the other factors that have been increasing the ways in which we and other communities, both in the state and nationwide, have seen this problem increasing from a struggle perspective, and I call those out in the memo as a lack of federal and state support, demographic shift, we're aware of the impacts the demographic shift has on our housing market. Those trickle down. We're aware of the impacts the demographic shift has on our workforce and our ability to maintain and hire a workforce. That's, that challenge spans sectors. Disparate local efforts regionally. We've done a lot of work on this area, but, we're not all pulling in the same direction, if you will, because there's really not a centralized approach. We're all kind of doing our own thing at the local level, or in some cases, not doing anything at the local level. That's a reality too. And increasing economic inequality is just kind of an obvious challenge, right? As housing costs and rental increase, rental, and therefore rental costs outpace income growth and kind of associated economic indicators, you have more people living in denser environments and people at the bottom falling into homelessness. So those are real challenges that I wanted to call out, that I know you know, but that I hope is helpful for people to hear. And then I also wanted to note that there are ongoing conversations amongst the provider community. We are at the table at those meetings. Assemblymember Kelly has also been joining those meetings, that has been exploring still preliminary, but exploring options for provision of summer shelter, emergency shelter, camping, something of that nature, services similar perhaps in nature, or perhaps not. Again, it's preliminary to what we do in the winter months at the cold weather emergency shelter, which is we're still working on our annual contract with St. Vincent de Paul, but it is preliminarily scheduled to open at its usual date of October 15th. So we will hopefully have new news for you and others on that topic soon, and maybe it might be useful to hear from Assemblymember Kelly, since he's been at those meetings too. And then I'll just wrap up by noting the rest of the memo that kind of talks about what other communities, Bellingham, Anchorage, Ashland, Oregon, a couple of others at the end in Oregon and Colorado, that have done on the shelter safety zone concept to try to care for the similar sorts of behavioral challenges that those communities have seen around their shelter provider, or in our case, our kind of provider campus. So those are there for you to chew on. And then what would be helpful, I think, from a staff perspective, is in the recommendation section of the memo, which is just to determine if you have any new additional information needs that this memo does not capture, that we could go back and research and provide to you later, or if you have any direction to give. And if you are interested in introducing legislation, there are a couple of bullet points that you see under their A, B, and C about questions that would be helpful for us to hear your thoughts on. But Mr. Chair, I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. And I mean, just for everyone's recollection, I mean, this kind of came about due to providers in the area of social services feeling either that their staff or their patrons or even members of the public who are going there anyway feeling unsafe, or that people didn't feel like they could access those services just due to some of the behaviors in the areas. That's kind of why this came about.
Yeah, that's correct. I think that I would characterize it by saying something very similar to you, that our provider community broadly, not necessarily unanimously, but broadly, came to you, came to us with a concern that their staff and the clients of their facilities in the Teal Street area are not able to operate effectively because of the behavioral challenges and illegal activity and alleged illegal activity that they are seeing at an increased volume compared to perhaps other parts of the municipality, specifically related to the individuals outside of their shelter and their facilities.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Barr. Questions from the Assembly? Ms. Adkisson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this question is probably for Ms. Wright. When we're looking at, you know, bans of camping or certain behaviors in certain areas, I'm looking at this memo, and I guess my concern, I just want to see if you also share this concern, is we're very clearly talking about the unhoused population. It's in the memo, it's been in our discussion, that's the reason for this ordinance. Would you have any concerns about like selective enforcement, even if the language of the ordinance itself were very neutral, the intent being pretty clearly to only apply to our unhoused population?
Thank you. Through the chair. So, short answer is yes, I would have significant legal concerns about that. The broader answer is we're all aware that the Grants Pass case came about last year. That specifically dealt with the Eighth Amendment cruel and unusual punishment. They did not deal with an equal protection claim that was there. Whenever we look at our ordinances and our legislation, we're constantly watching to make sure that we are not singling out a particular group, right? So it might be homeless people, it might be people that live in blue houses, it might be women, it might be Native Alaskans. We're always watching what are those classifications and making sure that we're not responding to a specific group and banning a specific group. It's very important that whatever we do is neutral, applied in a neutral manner, and is based on behavior, not a status or a class of people.
I had one, I guess. Do you see the Bellingham ordinance, one, I guess, has it been challenged in court? And two, do you see that as, anyway, do you see it being applied neutrally or not?
Thank you for the question. So I have been trying to do a little bit of research into Bellingham's ordinance, but as far as I can see, Bellingham has not been challenged. We did note in several instances here that the ACLU is challenging ordinances. We know they've challenged Anchorage, Boulder, I think Ashland, there was, or I might not get that right, there was one more. I haven't seen anything challenging Bellingham. What I would say about the Bellingham prohibition, first of all, the bullet points that you have in your memo, it's not an anti-camping ordinance. It talks about sitting or lying on a public sidewalk. It's not specific to sleeping, which was the concern in Grants Pass. It's also very narrow. It's only 2.5 blocks. It was very specific to their location and what they were doing. And it, similar to our Teal Street Center, was aimed at ensuring that people could come in to the location and access services. So it is very narrow, and that, I believe, is likely why it has not been challenged.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. A question from Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I'll continue on this similar line of questioning for the attorney about I guess hearing your description in response to Ms. Atkinson's question, like why would this, a shelter safety zone have any higher legal risk concern than the disorderly conduct ordinance that is been introduced by the Assembly? It seems to me that it's targeting a similar behavior. Do you have the same concerns between the two?
Thank you, through the chair. So I have the same concerns about the disorderly conduct ordinance as it is currently presented. The same concerns are there, that the discussion that we're having is not neutral application, neutral, citywide or everybody. Tourists who get in our way, I think somebody said at the last meeting, that's not what we're talking about. We are very specifically talking about homeless people. And if I were to go to court, if we were to be sued by the ACLU, they would have the meeting notes, they would have the organization notes, they would know what we're talking about. So every time we talk about these things, we need to look at broad perspective, bigger picture for our city. What are the behaviors that we don't like in our city? What are the behaviors that we need to stop or encourage so that our service providers can provide services versus a population. Same problem with the disorderly conduct.
Mr. Bryson?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'm going to ask a question that's more about protecting the patrons of Teal Street area. But I'm going to ask it in Mr. Deputy Mayor, just give me a moment. How am I asking? If a homeless encampment ended up in the Greenbelt, the Duck Creek Greenbelt behind my house in the Mendenhaven area, and they brought trash and human waste to that Greenbelt that is in between neighborhood homes in the valley, and the neighborhood called the police to come and deal with the situation. My suspicion, and Ms. Wright, this is where my first question comes in, how would the police handle somebody in that situation, somebody camping in my backyard in the Greenbelt that's connected to my backyard, leaving the same mess that we're dealing with over in the Jordan Creek, Teal Street area?
Through the chair, so I'll try and answer it and tell me if I'm not answering it correctly. So the city has trespass ordinances, and whether it's private property connected to your home or it is CBJ right-of-way property or it is state of Alaska right-of-way property, if a person is camping in that area and they are told by the owner or person in charge, you need to leave, you are not welcome here, and they either don't leave or they leave and come back, they are subject to criminal penalties. And JPD could cite them, they could arrest them, they could ask to house them in jail overnight and get bail for them depending on how they interact. That is citywide trespass ordinances.
Follow up, Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Sure.
So my question would be, why are we not affording the same protection to the patrons of the Glory Hall and the patrons of the Teal Street Center? The same thing is happening to the places where, to the Glory Hall where those people live. So our homeless are not afforded the same level of protection, or I'm sorry, let me get back into a question here. So if that same scenario happened in Teal Street, which has airport land, which has more regulations on it, and that's where people are camping, why are we not responding now and protecting that area where there shouldn't legally allowed to be camping, the same way that my neighborhood is protected from not allowing immediate camping in the individual neighborhoods? Why are we affording people who live in homes a higher level of protection than people that live in the emergency shelter? That's what I'm looking for.
Looks like Mr. Barr wants to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Bryson, for the question. So the trespass code that the attorney described is the code, and we can use that code, but we choose not to use that code on CBJ land for individuals who are experiencing homelessness and camping on that land until the impacts associated with that activity start to, we talked about this in previous meetings, right? Until those impacts start to have a consequence either on those individuals themselves or on other users of that land that necessitates that action. So that's when we utilize that, either that trespass process or the 48-hour notice that's in our camping section of code. And we would utilize that same process and that same code on any CBJ property borough-wide.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, may I ask? Sure. Why are we not doing that now then? Because we very clearly have people complaining about the camping that has taken place on CBJ property that is having a negative impact on the place where not only Glory Hall patrons live, but then where actual Juneau residents who are paying for their homes live. But why are we allowing that extra privilege or that ability to deny or to behave outside the law? Because, I mean, that's what we're facing right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would say that we are not treating any public land differently anywhere. No extra privilege being given to any particular area or parcel, and that we are not enforcing the law until we start to see those impacts start to exceed. Again, we could look at my other memo on this topic, but until they start to exceed those both quantitative and qualitative judgments, because that's the direction that we've interpreted from the Assembly. And if the Assembly wishes to give us different direction about when we should take enforcement action, we will certainly hear that and act accordingly.
Ms. Euskandis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question, I think, is also from Ms. Wright. So I don't have, and I'll pull it up in a moment, the prior memo directly in front of me, but it was very helpful, and that's in my mind as I read this one. I think a question I have, and I think the term from the last memo was manner in place, perhaps, or time in place, which is just thinking about how you could craft an ordinance in a different way. When I look at these, Bellingham, for example, after our last meeting, obviously we all are continuing to think and digest and research on our own. To me, that seems possibly more, or I think that could head off other problems that, sorry, I'll stick to the question, not to opine. But what is that true? Are these kind of examples of manner in place versus, but I think they do say zone, so I know it's almost like splitting hairs because, you know, if you define a physical zone, that's also manner in place. But could you explain the differences between those, or are there none?
Through the chair. So there really aren't too many differences between when you're talking about government action, that's when you're looking at time, manner, and place. So that's what the case law, that's what we look at. We're bound by time, manner, and place. Private organizations are not, right? So when, just taking again the Teal Street Center, if it's in their parking lot, that's theirs. Nobody's going to say anything about time, manner, and place restrictions. They're not going to look at neutral application. It's a private property. They can trespass and call the police. As soon as we move into state right-of-way or city public land citywide, we are bound by its government action, right? And so we are bound by time, place, and manner. We're bound by equal protection. We're bound by all of those rules. So does that answer your question?
Go ahead.
A quick follow-up. I think so. So it sounds like if you want to do a shelter protection zone, you're crafting something that is time, manner, and place. There's not a difference between that versus a different.
That's right. So if you asked me to create a shelter zone, I would probably come back to you with something fairly narrow as a government agency, you know, to keep it very narrow to that time, manner, and place. Again, neutral applicability.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Ms. Hall.
And my question is, you know, one of the radius, how large, do you want to include other areas and or broader no camping ordinance? What other areas are being similarly impacted as the Teal Street area?
Through the chair, thank you, Ms. Hall. I can't come up with any similar examples off the top of my head right now. In prior years, I think I would point to the Mill Street campground, and before that, the Thane area campground.
Sure.
Level of complaints from other areas in town, is it pretty much restricted to this area? Teal Street.
No, the complaint level is far higher in the Teal Street area than anywhere else.
Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Easier question for Madam Attorney. The anchorage restrictions on 200 feet within public trails, 200 feet of water bodies, 500 feet of playgrounds and schools and things like that. How difficult would you see implementing something along that line that just had very specific 200, 200, and 500 for like something that mirrored Anchorage.
Through the chair. So we could certainly implement something similar to what Anchorage has. This is citywide for them. It's very broad. I watched a lot of the testimony that occurred. I think the questions that came up were, could Anchorage Police Department actually enforce this? What type of burden would it place? Anchorage is much larger, so you can talk to, you would have to talk to Chief Boss about this. But I know that came up as a challenge. ACLU has sued Anchorage on the 2023 and 2025 code provisions that they implemented. Those were very much focused on how the abatement process worked and the fact that the ACLU was responding to basically people not having time to get their things or their things being bulldozed. We have not seen anything yet from the ACLU on this current Anchorage ordinance, and I don't have any indication one way or the other whether they would file a lawsuit.
Not seeing other questions. Mr. Steininger.
Thank you. And seeing as you're how to kind of ask this as a question that's answerable, Mr. Barr, you spoke to working through plans or working through concepts to bring back to the assembly about creating more options and alternatives for people to go, whether it's keeping the winter shelter open year round or reopening a campground. But based on your comments, it sounds like those things are not necessarily ready to come to the assembly for action now. We're being asked to consider the shelter safety zone in the intervening time period. And do you kind of have any instinct from, working in this area where these individuals might end up actually going within town? Where is this impact going to shift to from the Teal Strait area? Should we make that an area with a complete stricter no camping ban? Will they end up in, Mr. Bryson's neighborhood as he used in his example, or do we have kind of a general sense of where that population might move to within the city?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Steininger. I can only point to other locations that currently, the folks want to be close to services, close to transportation, minimize their burden, not unlike you and me. And so, we'll see increased, my instinct would be is that we would see increased camping on the border of whatever we define a shelter safety zone to be geographically, and then also along easily accessible green belt type areas. So think along the undeveloped side of Mendenhall River, back behind Fred Meyer, various sort of park and green belt areas in the Lemon Creek area, and the like.
I guess to follow up, and I guess this is probably more comment than question, most of those areas described are much closer to existing residential neighborhoods. Is that correct?
I think that's probably accurate.
Thank you.
I had a question, Mr. Barr. So under our kind of current guidance that came out that you included in a memo last time, if folks are camping on city land, I don't know if it differs if it's state land or state right away, as long as they're not significantly accumulating uncontrolled garbage, have visible human waste, problematic drug use, unsecured bear attractants, have more there's like 10 different bullet points. As long as they're not doing those things, would they likely be able to continue camping in that public area and not be dispersed by the police?
Yes.
So there are those, assuming they can do that and they're in a public land, that is a spot for them to go.
Yes, on city land. Yes.
Further questions on this topic? We could do comments. If anyone has a motion, we could start with that. Ms. Hughes-Candies.
Mr. Chair, I want to keep it specific to this and get staff the guidance that they need and, keep it concise in our discussion with one another. So I haven't asked staff, but I am curious if, we can throw this in the garbage if you don't want me to ask, but I'm not sure it was part of the direction, but is there any progress and did we ask for ideas for a summer low barrier shelter? And that could include like a piece of land. And is that okay? That feels relatively germane to this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Mr. Barr, has there been any progress on that, or is that anything that staff is working on, or am I insane?
No, yes, there has been progress. You are not insane. Before I answer that question, I might just take the liberty to add to my answer to Mr. Steininger's question, which is his point, I think, was correct about the residential areas, but I would also just point out that there are residential areas in the Teal Street area as well. Just to kind of wrap that answer up. And then to Ms. Hughes-Candies' question, yes, so the group that's been meeting has been tasking itself with identifying potential locations and options to consider. We've talked in the past about all the sort of challenges that we would need to address in considering any individual location and its sort of merits and demerits. One potential site that we've looked at, so one of the challenges that we have with the cold weather shelter is its location. It is challenging to access, especially in the winter when it's cold and snowy and icy out. And so we're one of the areas that I am hesitant to call out because we haven't been able to get in touch with the owner of that property yet, but is in the Teal Street area that we have, early indications that might be for sale. So one of the options that I would anticipate bringing back to you in the future is a potential land purchase and renovation or land purchase and demolish and build shelter option. But I anticipate there will be others in addition to that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. And yeah, as Mr. Barr said, like the group has been contemplating this question and many others, but the group is at the moment specifically looking at parcels with suggestions to offer the assembly. One of the ideas that this group had was not having just one centralized problem area, but maybe a few different smaller areas that might be less of a nuisance. So that's one idea that that this group is exploring. It's looking at several different, just trying to look for locations around town that would be suitable.
Thanks, Mr. Kelly. Ms. Adkisson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If any assembly member hates this idea, feel free to say so, but I would be interested in hearing staff looking at and potentially coming back with ideas on what we can be doing on city land to mitigate some of the impacts of our on-house population. I know that there are significant challenges and it would cost money, but things like porta potties and sharps containers, things that we can do that will lessen impact of waste and things like that. So it just seems to me like something that potentially has some value in this sort of time period where we're big things are in motion. So I would be interested in having staff look seriously at that and see if there are ways we can do some minor improvements to help things out.
Thank you, Ms. Adkisson. Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I had another question, and this is a bit off the cuff, so I apologize for not thinking about it earlier, but is subject to an appropriation from the assembly. Do you think there'd be appetite for opening the cold weather shelter earlier this year? And it's not right around the corner, but I imagine if all of these options are going to take some time, and that could, provide us a bit more window to have this discussion while still taking care of, I mean, not, it won't take care of needs, but alleviating the issue in the short term. And you might not know the answer to that, but curious if that's been discussed, recognizing it would cost money.
Thank you through the chair. Thank you, Ms. Wall, for the question. Yes, that is a question that I regularly engage in conversation with our operator, and the short answer is that's probably not an option from a staffing and capacity perspective from the operator. If that changes, I'm sure I will be the first to know, and it will certainly be on my radar to bring it back to the body, because I would certainly interpret that to be of interest to the body. The operator, St. Vincent de Paul, is operating at the limits of their capacity when they're operating the cold weather shelter for us. We are currently in contract negotiations with them for the coming year. I anticipate part of that negotiation will be granting them an earlier start time for staff, just for training purposes and onboarding, so that they can hopefully mitigate some of the turnover challenges that they experienced early in the season last year. But I don't anticipate they will have capacity to open before October 15th today. But again, if that changes, I will certainly bring that to you.
Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in follow up to that, we've talked a lot about staffing capacity, and I'm certain, it's hard to hire with such tough jobs and that sort of thing. But is that a problem that could be solved if the city were to, for the cold weather shelter operation, increase money money on contribution so that wages are higher? Would that be easier for them to find staff? I'm just, we already spend a lot of money, regardless if it's cleaning up with city staff. I'd rather be spending more money on a constructive solution instead of kind of where we're at. Do you have any idea if that would assist with that issue?
Thank you, Ms. Atkinson, through the chair. I haven't done any research on that. I mean, my instinct is that if you're willing to spend a lot of extra money, then sure, yes, we could solve almost any staffing problem with an infinite amount of money. But I can't give you an answer off the top of my head about what that would take.
Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So we have talked about having a cold weather emergency shelter during nicer weather times, and the message comes up every time: they won't use it when the weather's nice. There are not rules and restrictions when they're camping, so they can behave in any behavior whatsoever, and that does reduce the amount of usage of the cold weather emergency shelter. It's not utilized during the summer, and even in the shoulder times, they found that when it's not really cold and nasty, they don't stay in it because there are too many restrictions. And I check with the providers for those stories. And I say that camping is not the answer. If we are trying to make camping easier, it means we've given up on trying to end homelessness. By trying to make it okay for people to not have a home and provide a camping area for them, it means we've stopped trying to provide a home for them. So I don't know necessarily that trying to solve the camping issue is the right direction that brings an end to homelessness, or at least takes us towards functional zero, which means we're handling our homeless problem. Right now, this protection zone that we're talking about, either Bellingham or Anchorage's or Ashland, Oregon's, is not about solving homelessness. We need to separate that question out, because that is not what we are trying to do right now. If we were trying to solve homelessness, we would be having other discussions that would bring other providers, and we would be talking about the housing that we're building. That's not the discussion we're having. Right now, we have the gem of Alaska of homeless services. We have a homeless shelter next to the United Health Services campus. Every city in Alaska is jealous of what we have, and we haven't protected it. We haven't protected the patrons. We haven't protected the staff. And we're not talking about allowing people to camp near this property. That's not really what the issue is. We're talking about protecting those very vulnerable, the most vulnerable of us, from the predators of our community. That is what this group is asking for. That is the problem that we're trying to solve now. We have to separate it. We are not trying to get other people housing in this conversation. That's not what this group is asking for. They're asking for help. They're asking for protection. They have staff that is scared to go to work at the United Health Services campus. That is on us because we have not provided enough direction to stop that illegal behavior that is happening around that. The same protection that all of our neighborhoods have, that every one of us have that are in a house right now, that same protection is not being granted to the patrons of the Glory Hall. So our homeless services, our homeless community is being victimized even further because we do not have a level of protection around them. We should not be trying to solve the problem of homelessness tonight. That is not what is in front of us. I'm going to end this by moving forward a motion. I would like, we'll see where everybody's at on this, a motion to bring forward a Juneau protection area that would mirror Bellingham's, but have all the appropriate Juneau-esque details to them. And so that we would have at our next assembly meeting, we could have a Juneau protection ordinance, and we could finally be protecting the most vulnerable people in the community, which is one of the reasons why I'm up here. So thank you very much for the time, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and that is my motion.
Did you move the motion and then you were saying for introduction at the next assembly meeting, or anyway?
We need to have a vote on it. I'm sorry, let me correct that motion to bring it, a motion to a protection ordinance to the COW so we can have a discussion on it.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson.
Better for the group? All right.
Very good. I see objections. Ms. Adkisson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate trying to move forward on this discussion. Unfortunately, after hearing from the attorney, and I have had some discussions with the ACLU, I'm pretty concerned that any version of this, with how we've been discussing it, would be potentially illegal. And I really think that I'd rather focus on other areas where we aren't getting ourselves into legal hot water. So I just don't know that I can support any version of this concept moving forward. So I'm going to object.
Thank you, Ms. Adkisson. Ms. Huskandes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a question on Mr. Bryson's motion. I would need more detail on the boundaries. At this point, I know you're trying to mimic the Bellingham model, but theirs is, really specific to a couple of areas. So you say Juneau, so where in Juneau, how big in Juneau, so I can conceptualize that.
Go ahead, Mr. Bryson, or, we could see that after staff has a chance to put something together.
My intent is that the attorney would use the appropriate boundaries that we've been discussing so that the discussion that we'd had here would be reflective in the boundary or the protection area that we've been discussing. So I wouldn't think that it would be anything more than the immediate area that we've been talking about.
So Teal Street is what you're talking about?
Teal Street area, that neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hall.
And I'm also going to object. I appreciate what we're trying to do here, but I would argue that the most vulnerable people are the campers. And to continue to push them away from the only soup kitchen in town, I do think it's awful that what the staff is experiencing and the atmosphere and lawlessness. And I think there's probably, we can all work harder as a community to try to figure out creative solutions for that. I understand that security guards have been hired. On the private property, things can be done, but I don't know that creating a zone and pushing the most vulnerable, the ones that are in a tent without the protections of shelter walls. And, I don't see this as a solution to addressing what we're trying to get at and making it safer for everyone. But I would be in, I think some more protection right around the buildings, perhaps the enhanced monitoring, checking in, might be, anything we could do with that, having a bit more presence of, trying to keep the lawlessness, the drug deals, et cetera, that are happening right around the area would be good. But as far as moving the campers on to, I think that's really hurting the people that are the most vulnerable. Thank you.
Mr. Kelly?
Thank you. I am honestly torn about this. I did have a chance to speak with a lot of the social service providers. Concerns I heard is that like money that would be going to be providing services is instead going to security measures like extra fencing and a double door. I've heard from constituents who've talked about that area doesn't just cater to the unhoused, it also provides other services to our community, especially in the Teal Street Center. And I've heard from people who experience fear trying to get those services. But I'm not sure. I feel like this particular motion might be a little too broad for me, especially considering that we haven't identified any location for these people to go. I dislike being in a situation where we're telling people you can't be here, but we're not telling them where they are able to go. I understand and agree with Mr. Bryson's comments that finding another location is not solving homelessness. And I think trying to solve homelessness is way too broad of a goal to expect of this assembly at this moment in one meeting, or even in a few meetings. But providing an alternative location for people to go, I think the fact that we're not doing that gives me discomfort. So I think I appreciate Mr. Bryson for bringing this this idea forward, but as it is offered, I cannot support it.
I'll give Ms. Wall a chance and then get back to you, Ms. Uskandis. Ms. Wall.
Thanks, Mr. Smith. I'm supportive of Mr. Bryson's motion just because it keeps the conversation going. I definitely don't know that I would support this. I think the boundaries question is a huge thing, and narrow is the only way that I would accept things. I'm not interested in talking about exclusion zones and public trails and water bodies. I'm interested if there is a way to make sure people can get in and out of Teal Street, and including our unhoused, including our emergency professionals. If there's something that we can do narrowly to help with that, I'm interested in that conversation. Mr. Bryson's moving us forward and towards a direction that I think is, yes, vague, but good enough for us to come back to the cow with more conversation. So I'll support it. And yeah, that's all I'll say.
Ms. Uskandis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Objection for purpose of a question to staff. I think it's for Mr. Barr, maybe it's for Ms. Wright. My question is, if we were looking at this concept and we were looking at this motion, so we're looking at potentially doing this, hypothetically, if Grants Pass was upheld, nothing had changed. I forget who was on which side, but I think you know what I mean. We had the law a certain way and then it changed after that case. If it had not changed, would this be legal, or would you be advising us that we couldn't do this? Would anything be different?
Through the chair. So if we are looking at the Bellingham model, nothing would be different. There's purely has a prohibition against sitting or lying on the public sidewalk. If we are looking at some of the other models, Anchorage model, it would not be legal under the prior precedent that came out of Ninth Circuit. So it's the camping piece. It really focused on the ability of people to sleep and whether that was a fundamental right such that it should be protected. So Bellingham would likely still be upheld.
Okay, thank you. I think for the moment, I'm going to maintain my objection, but I just, hearing this conversation, I appreciate Mr. Bryson trying to move us forward, and I appreciate the pointing out that we're kind of splitting what are we trying to do here, what problem are we trying to solve here versus the giant problem of homelessness that we kind of can get lost in. Similarly, I want to just say there was nothing magical about the reason we've given the direction not to change the way we enforce things is because after Grants Pass happened, staff said, now we can do other things legally. Do you want to change how we do things? And we said, no, we don't, because there was, again, nothing really magical about the fact the Ninth Court changed their mind. What we are dealing with is we had a summer campground locally, and then we don't have it anymore. So this feeling of like, oh my God, we have like a real boiling problem, and we have people coming to us, we have homeowners and providers saying, we need some help right now. That's got nothing to do with that. That has everything to do with our summer campground. So maybe I'm making that clear in my own head and speaking that out loud. So I appreciate, to some extent, keeping this going. And then on the other hand, I don't think this is something that I personally could support when we don't have somewhere else. I would rather focus on the getting somewhere else. But we'll see when it comes to a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Steininger.
Thank you. And I guess I want to say that I completely agree with the intent here of trying to ensure that we have, safety for this population and avoid, predation on this population. But I struggle to see how a policy that would push the group further into the margins or push them into other areas of town would really work to achieve, kind of any of that end goal of safety. And I have concerns that, spending a lot of time, a lot of staff time on, drafting this policy that really is just dealing with, 10-degree down, symptom of a much larger, different problem is going to be productive in the long run. I think our staff time is much better spent working towards things that better address the issue instead of just shifting it and moving it. I think Ms. Hall, I think you brought up the idea of, maybe part of this is just continued or increased presence in the neighborhood to try and, push away some of the bad actors that are the real problem, because I don't believe it's that it is all of the campers are the real problem. I think there are small numbers of people coming in to prey on those campers, whether it's selling drugs or or other, other issues of, violent disturbance and things like that. I don't think that that is the vast majority of those campers. And so I think there's a better way that isn't just squeezing a balloon in one place and spending all of our staff time squeezing the balloon instead of looking at other areas. And this is even before considering, some of the legality questions that Ms. Wright brought up. And so I want to support this. I want to support the intent, but I don't think I can support, the concept of this safety zone because I just can't see how it takes us forward as a community on this issue more than just whack-a-mole on the next piece of the problem without actually trying to address anything beyond one symptom of a much broader, much more difficult issue.
Thank you, Mr. Steininger. Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So first, the Glory Hall does not have security. There's not security in that area. The bootleggers are able to keep cars from parking there indefinitely is the only measure of security. Just they can keep cars from overextending their parking. By not having a protection zone for our most vulnerable population, we're actually making the homeless situation worse. By not creating an area where people can be vulnerable and unhoused and making every area like a predatory safe zone, we are increasing the number of homeless. Every drug transaction that we allow by not having a protection, we are strengthening the addicts, or we're adding to them. We have to push back on the criminal behavior. That's why I went with the Bellingham, because it says nothing about camping. I've only brought this forward at the behest of the groups that are asking for protection. We should take the camping issue up at a different time. It has different issues. I think that trying to make camping acceptable is harming the homeless community. We should be working at housing, not making camping okay. I don't want to see any more victims. I don't want to see any more addicts. That is why I've asked for this and the groups have asked for this. Enough is enough. I'm going to end my comments there. Could we call the question, please, Mr. Deputy Mayor?
I'll say something because I haven't spoken to it yet, and then we can vote. I'll support the motion. It's just to give us something to discuss, to take to the ACLU, to see. It's a place to start. I admit, an imperfect solution, but I feel like we need to do something for people providing services to vulnerable people in that area. I am concerned this is an intractable problem. I don't know if anyone has figured it out. Maybe other countries where, the federal government actually funds mental health and housing and education and does things that, anyway, to actually invest in their people. They might be doing it better, but as far as I know, many places, if not every place in the United States with, not terrible climate suffers from this issue. So, but it would be an attempt at doing something. We would have something to discuss. I do feel, and I've heard, there is just by having with enough people in the immediate area, it is a draw for other problematic behavior, which is what we're really trying to fix. I get maybe pushing people away. That might help with the volume, therefore decreasing some of the other behaviors. And of course, we have a capacity issue with our law enforcement, and that is a big issue that is hopefully getting better. And hopefully we've tried to help with increases to pay, and hopefully that will get better. But to me, this is just a way to try to do something and to have a discussion on it. So I will support Mr. Bryson's motion. Ms. Hendricks, we have a motion and we have objection. Would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. To bring forward a Juno Teal Street Protection Ordinance to the next Committee of the Whole, Mr. Bryson,
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson,
No.
Ms. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
No.
Mr. Steininger,
No.
Ms. Wall,
Yes.
Ms. Hughes Candies,
No.
Deputy Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Motion fails. 4 yeas and 4 nays.
Thank you, Ms. Hendricks. I would move notice of reconsideration on that vote.
Mr. Chair, is that immediate or is that for a later date?
If it were to be done immediately, we need 6 votes to move it, so. Or to bring it back up, I believe, yeah. So, okay, we discussed that. There is another issue, yes, team. Ms. Atkinson.
Oh, sorry. Susan, I just want to go first. She can. I'm just saying, on the moving to reconsider, I would object to that motion. I think we have people, most of the people here, and I don't see why we should reconsider what we just took.
I just gave notice of reconsideration.
Can you not?
Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if this is, I'm just going to throw something out there and see where it lands. I would, especially hearing notice of reconsideration, I would make a motion to keep this issue in the committee of the whole. And I don't know if that would make sense, given that we just voted on it, but.
And you would want to keep the shelter safety zone in the committee of the whole?
Yes, I think conceptually, Mr. Smith, because it seems with a 4-4 vote, I don't know. Maybe that doesn't make sense if we don't need more from staff. Maybe that's best. I leave it to you and you decide whether you want to reconsider it. I think I will withdraw the motion, but it was more supporting that concept and keeping it here so it had a home. But I see that that doesn't necessarily make sense. So it was meant just as a motion of support for your motion, but I'll withdraw it.
It might all kind of lead to the same, I mean, we'll see what happens next meeting, but
I think so.
then
Yeah.
nothing would happen in the
Yeah,
meantime.
that's fine.
Unless people have other motions on it, but. Ms. Hall.
A question and possibly a motion. So we are going to discuss this at the next committee of the whole as well?
So through the chair. So just to clarify, there are 2 things that you can do. So you have made a motion for an exclusion zone that was voted down. You cannot talk about that at the next meeting unless there's notice of a motion to reconsider. So at the beginning of next meeting, you will vote to say whether or not you want to have that discussion at the next meeting. If you want to make motions to do something else that's not a shelter exclusion zone and have that brought to the next meeting, you can do that. This is only the shelter exclusion zone that you have voted down and given notice on.
Give this a try. I move that we direct staff to bring back potential solutions to increasing the safety in the area around our shelter. Is that too close to?
I guess, Ms. Wall, maybe you're just looking for other possible options beyond this shelter safety zone type option. Very good. Ms. Wall raised her hand.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I'll just say, like, this was, in my mind, the same motion I made last time. I mean, maybe I wasn't super clear, but I tried to be clear to staff that, and I think you all that that's the problem I was trying to solve. And I think staff can speak to it, but I believe this memo was essentially a response to that same request that Ms. Hall is making.
And I guess the staff response, I I may know the answer and that we just, anyway, other solutions that we have thought of, or is it that they are hard to come by?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It would certainly be helpful from a staff perspective if there was more specificity about which or what solutions we might do some investigation on. We can certainly brainstorm offline amongst staff and with our provider community, but you are correct. Solutions are hard to come by.
I will withdraw my motion, but knowing that this conversation is continuing and we are all searching for better options and for a safer environment in the Teal Street area. And with that, I'll withdraw my motion, but we'll keep working on it.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I might have, I do want to come away from this meeting having made a little progress. From a lot of the conversations I've had, it sounds like a lot of the problem has to do with enforcement. And I realize that like our police has made an effort to have a larger presence in the area, but I think just having some sort of security presence there might serve as more of a deterrent. So like we can actually see and respond, or maybe just having people there would be a deterrent. And so I would almost want to see what our appetite might be to looking at just having either dedicated security or other security options. If the committee of the whole would be interested in looking at some other sort of deterrent besides a zone that would also then have to be enforced.
Mr. Kelly, were you talking about private security or additional JPD presence at the area?
I'm really open to either. I think either would provide a deterrent, but I also know that our police officers are understaffed. So I guess I'm open to exploring all of our options, and maybe that's something that we can consider at our next meeting as well.
I guess, for staff, I mean, do you have a response about private security and or, additional or increased JPD capacity? And then maybe if we hear something, but go ahead, just so we're not in the dark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to talk a little bit about that. It's a topic that we've discussed. From our perspective, JPD is providing essentially as much extra patrol services as they have the capacity for currently. I also believe that they are able to largely respond to calls for service as requested. Sometimes higher priority calls take priority, but JPD has been, generally speaking, able to be responsive to calls in this area. JPD does not have the capacity to have an officer on site all the time. That could change with additional staffing at JPD, but that's not a reality in the short term for us. We do have a number of officers going through academy and having graduated academy recently, and more going through in the winter, but we are still a far ways away from full staffing. Private security is likely an option. Private security would likely just be one extra or additional person calling for JPD service when they saw that need. Private security would still be reliant upon the providers and staff in those areas to want to utilize JPD services and make reports and press charges, all of which are and have historically been in this area sometimes successful and sometimes challenging. Would private security be provide additional deterrence in this area? I think likely some. I don't think it's miracle solution. Hopefully, some portion of that gives you help. I also think it would be expensive.
Is that something you'd come back with just some, anyway, I don't know, of course, it's always time and resources to look into those options and things, but.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there's a couple of different levels of that, if that's the will of the body. There's the level where, I make a couple of phone calls and bring you back some rough order of magnitude estimates, and chat with providers about like what they would like to see and give you some very, very high level information. That's kind of one level. A deeper level would be to do a formal request for proposals from contractors that specifically outlines the scope of work that we would want to see in that area. A third option would be to see if there is an entity in the Teal Street area campus, perhaps one of the nonprofit tenants of that space that would be willing to manage a grant that the assembly might provide for them to do that service for their neighborhood. So there are a variety of options, and I think at the direction of the body, we could explore one or more of those.
Thoughts from the body on getting a little more information on possible private security at Teal Street? Ms. Hall.
I think in general, ways to increase safety in the area that doesn't involve displacing the campers. I was reading an article, some shelters may employ security staff provided they receive the same training as all shelter staff, including trauma-informed care and familiar with the shelter's low barrier and harm reduction philosophy. So, I think it's not good enough to just go out and contract with a security firm, but really have them integrated in how best to support the population, but also to keep folks safe. So I think that's good to go ahead and explore that as an opportunity.
Mr. Bryson.
Maybe staff or the attorney can help me out here. I'm trying to separate out the predatory criminal behavior that is harming our efforts, the shelter's efforts, United Health Services campus efforts. It would be one thing if everybody who is camping behaved by the exact same rules that everybody that has an abode behaves by. But unfortunately, we have a criminal element that has taken root in that area. They've wreaked havoc to the business community, and they are taking advantage of the patrons that actually do use the services of Glory Hall. One of the meetings that I went to, I asked the very pointed question. If a person came to any of the social service providers, Glory Hall was there, Aware was there, and I said, they had the statement, hey, I've been sober for a week. I need to get out of my situation. I need help so that I can get my life better. How many organizations could take that person in within 48 hours? And 4 of them could. The main complaint is that the people that are camped out in front are refusing services of the Glory Hall. So we're trying to have a conversation, trying to figure out how to provide more service to these people that have figured out how to operate with a criminal element that is protected because they're camping next to the homeless shelter. We wouldn't provide criminals any of that protection, but because they're in a camp tent across the street from the Glory Hall, all of a sudden they're afforded more protections than the patrons of Glory Hall themselves. I'm not asking for us to solve homelessness or to figure out a campground. We've had a campground before and it turned into a sex traffic ring. I don't know that I could support that again. But right now, we have a criminal element that is plaguing our community, the business community, the homeless community, and the neighborhood communities that are right there. And every time we don't give any protection or try to figure out how we can make it better for the people out there, we are literally protecting the criminals that are preying on these providers. I can't say it any more clear. These are not people that are like coming to us for services. They've refused services and instead are choosing to prey upon the patrons. That's how they're getting their services right now. Any level of protection that we can provide to that Teal Street area will have a huge impact on the homeless community, making our job easier to solve homelessness. But until we root out this biggest criminal element, everything else is going to be confusing and distracting. This is the main thing that we need to solve right now, because we won't make a dent on homelessness until we solve the worst problem of it. That's what I've just described. Sorry for the time, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
So that sounds like you're supportive of getting some information on private security. I won't talk about the police capacity and, evidence and things that they need, and also prosecutorial capacity, but okay. Are people interested in getting some more information on private security in the area? Do head nods, we can do a vote. Ms. Usianis.
Thank you for bringing us back on track, Mr. Chair. I guess I would say I don't know that we need to take a formal vote. I see like some visual reactions from various people, or if we need to take a real vote, obviously we can. I just wouldn't want staff to spend too much time on this. I think obviously you got 8 people who agree we would like it to be safer there. I don't know that the city getting private security for a specific area. I mean, we do have other areas where our on-house population congregates. I think we'll hear from people who say from that. And to that I say, like, when I say where our homeless population is congregating, I just think it's important, I'm going to say again because I say it every time, where would you go if you were homeless? Think about that. Think about where you would camp tonight, what services you would need, what you would do. So like, I feel like I have to throw that in there. I know we're talking about people who are preying on that, but they fall into the same category as people who are preying on anyone. Drug dealers are, yes, we don't want drugs in our community. Yes, that's another problem that actually we don't spend a lot of time talking about on this dais that I would say we should, but I don't know. I bring it back. I don't mind getting a little information, but I just wouldn't want staff to spend too much time because it feels like a little off the rails for me. Couple of phone calls would be fine.
I'm also good with a couple phone calls and some basic information. All right, so we've gone over those. I mean, we know our team is thinking about things to do, but obviously this is just a challenging situation from many different levels. Other questions or thoughts or directions on, this topic in the area, in the Teal Street area or elsewhere from coming from this memo? Ms. Uskandis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think staff would bring it up organically and discuss it with you to get it on the agenda. But if not, I am interested in hearing how things progress with potential purchase of land or potential finding a spot as a summer campground or some summer low barrier shelter situation. So that would be my only request of staff. Please bring that to us as soon as you get something on it.
Mr. Bryson.
I was just going to point out that there are actually designated camping grounds. As Ms. Uskandis asked the question, where would we camp? As productive members of the society, we would be expected to camp in one of the designated campgrounds. We'd have to register and fill out the little form and pay the $8 a day. That is what is required of our citizens to camp. That's why I think it's a misnomer to say then we could then create free camping on any city land, even though we have designated camping spots specifically for camping. But I would not object to any information being brought forward. I'm just confused because then if we had summer camping, could I go camp on it then too? Is that it's for camping, but we know that that's not what happens. We saw what happened with Mill Ground. It becomes a den of issues. Thank you for the time.
Ms. Hall?
The two campgrounds, public campgrounds on Forest Service property have a limit of 14 days and require a credit card and internet access to be able to reserve a spot there. And I just want to make one final comment in closing. Having an addiction is not a crime. Suffering from mental illness is not a crime. Yes, those folks may resort to criminal behavior to survive, but I'd like to just have that on the record. Thank you.
Very good. Well, we're getting some more information back. We have notice of reconsideration for the shelter safety zone for next meeting, so we'll likely be talking about this again, or we will. 7:22, short break, folks. Very good. Let's meet back at 7:30, so 8 minutes. Thanks. I will bring us back into order. We just went through agenda topic 1. Next, we have ordinance 2025-13B, ranked choice voting. It's been through this committee once, it's been introduced. We've had public testimony. We had amendments at the full assembly meeting. It was referred back to the COW, and my understanding is, the intent was to address the amendments in the COW, but just remind me, Madam Attorney, or any of the team, it will take a motion from this body to get it back on a regular assembly meeting, or anyway, to move it to another committee. Yeah.
That's correct, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So at this point, it's been removed from the August 18th General Assembly meeting. It will take a motion with a date to get it back for public hearing.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Okay, we have the ordinance, we have amendments, but Ms. Atkinson, did you want to speak to this ordinance?
I did, thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that this ordinance and this concept has been through a lot of different committees, and we've talked about it at different times, and kind of in the shuffle, I do think the why for this ordinance has been a little lost. And so I kind of wanted to bring us back to why I introduced this ordinance in the first place, which is that, I mean, we've talked a lot about how the community supports it, but I think that the community supports it for a good reason, which is that it really is good for races where there are lots of candidates in one seat. And I think Juneau in general likes having lots of candidates in race, because it means that the person that they feel represents them the most is the person who actually gets onto the assembly, because they have many choices and they're able to pick the person that best represents Juneau. And in our current voting system, first past the post, it doesn't handle races with many candidates very well, because you can have candidates with similar values taking votes from each other, and therefore pressure for candidates that might have similar values to drop out, so that you only have one person that kind of has those values, so that that person gets all the votes for the people who like them. And I don't think that that incentive to having fewer candidates is good for Juneau. I think that we like it when we have choice. So that's one big reason I introduced this. Another is that ranked choice voting really supports consensus building, which, I think this community values a lot. I mean, it's something we see in our assembly. We all work very well together. And I think that's a value of Juneau. And when you are able to rank all your candidates, even if your first choice doesn't get in, but your second choice does, you say, okay, I had an impact on this election. My vote was counted and did make a difference. And even if my first choice person didn't win, my second choice did. And in a lot of cases, the second choice vote could be multiple people who have pretty different values, but they agree on some things. And so there is that bringing together that happens when you're able to rank candidates in like a nuanced, full way and know that your vote is counted completely, whereas you kind of, with first past the post, one and done. So those are all reasons I've introduced it. It's consensus building, and it encourages a lot of candidates to run, which is always good for our assembly and good for our city. So I wanted to bring that in. And now what we're talking about today are these amendments, which is how we deal with block voting, which is the case of the school board, and if an assembly member or a mayor were to resign early, right? So in those cases, you have multiple seats and one race. And currently we do the block voting. We were looking at cascade ranked choice voting. And Mr. Steininger and I have talked to some members of the community that were concerned about it. And ultimately, I'll speak for myself, I decided that, block voting is familiar, ranked choice voting is not, and cascade ranked choice voting is not, and it's not something we've even seen at the state level. So it'd be a completely new concept that we'd be doing, and that's not something I'm really comfortable doing right now. I think it's too much change. It's kind of change that we don't have a lot of information on, whereas we do with ranked choice voting for a single seat race. So Mr. Steininger and I co-authored an amendment here to bring it back so that we will keep block voting for the school board and in the early resignation of an assembly member. So ranked choice voting for all of our normal one-seat races, and then how we've always done it for multi-seat races. I think what I would like to see is we kind of decide how we handle that question, and I would like to see if we can get it on the August 18th assembly. We don't need to vote on it there, but I do think we should at least have it out there for public comment, and we can decide where to move forward if we want another assembly meeting. But I think folks are aware that there is public comment on the 18th. It was in a news article recently, and I don't think we should deny the public the chance to comment on it on the August 18th. So we can get to that, but that's sort of my hope of what we get out of this tonight. And I would say if people have concerns or questions, I'd really like to hash that all out here so we all know, like all your concerns and questions are addressed before I bring it to the assembly, so we're kind of on the same page. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you, Ms. Atkinson. I guess we could take some general questions and things and then maybe move to amendments. Mr. Bryson?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I guess this question would be for the maker of the motion. While I understand, unfortunately, we have gone past the date of being able to get something on a ballot, ranked choice voting came to the state through a vote of the people. Was there a reason why you didn't try to get this onto the ballot to let Juneau vote if they wanted to change their ballot? Because if we got a vote from the people, then that's pretty much the best way for them to say what they were wanting to do, as opposed to if the assembly implements it, the members of the public that object, are they going to say the assembly pushed us on this, as opposed to allowing it for a municipal vote? Could you maybe just speak to that briefly?
Absolutely, and this might not be a short answer, but I'll do my best. So the first point I would hit on is what's been in the memo before, which is that Juneau overwhelmingly supported it on the state level when it was first implemented, and in fact, when this repeal came up most recently. So that's pretty new data, and I know it's not one-to-one, but it is a significant and important thing to remember. The other thing is just sort of the general thought of putting forward advisory votes as a representative body, which I do have an issue with. I will say on the legislature, if the legislators had the support to do it themselves, they would not have brought it. It would not have become a citizen initiative. It was only because the legislature wasn't willing to do it themselves that the citizens brought it forward, right? So the legislature does do elections bills. They're looking at them now. We just did an elections reform ordinance where we were looking at our petitions and initiatives. This body passed the vote by mail not long ago. The point of representative democracy is so that when we have hard questions, we don't have to involve the whole community in those hard questions. It is our responsibility to grapple with them and do what we think is best for the community and supported by the community. If we bucked every hard question, I could name a dozen that we've dealt with in the last year that we didn't have a good vote or an idea of if the community supported it, and we did it anyway because that is what we were elected to do. So I would say in this case, we have more data than we often do when we grapple with hard questions because of the most recent vote on the repeal of this last election. So I really am opposed to taking it to advisory vote because it does feel like bucking of our responsibilities.
That was a more thorough answer than I was expecting. Thank you, Ms. Atkinson.
I'm not seeing any other questions. Would you like to move an amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I would move amendment number 1 from myself and Mr. Steininger on page 14 of the packet.
Mr. Kelly, did you have a point of order on procedure?
Either
I'll
that
have to
or
move the ordinance before I can move the amendment. Is that what you're about to say? Thank you. I will say then I will move ordinance 2025-13 version B to the August 18th assembly meeting for public hearing. And I would object for the purposes of offering amendment number 1 from myself and Mr. Steininger.
Thank you. Ms. Atkinson, please go ahead.
I mean, I've already talked a little bit about this. This was after meeting with a few folks, deciding that keeping block voting that our community is comfortable with and doesn't introduce new types of voting that we haven't even done on the state level. And so this would be an amendment that would remove the part that does cascade ranked choice voting for multi-seat races and instead keeping ranked choice voting for single-seat races and the block voting that we're used to for the school board and an early resignation by an assembly member.
Very good. Thank you. So essentially the change is ranked choice voting for a single candidate assembly race. Everything else kind of remains the same. Very good. Question or objections to the motion? Ms. Hall, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, I'm going to object. First I would like to say that I fully support ranked choice voting at the state level for our state and federal elections. However, I feel that the voters should have direct input through the ballot box on this issue because it does reflect the transparency outlined in the Voting Rights Act. I also feel like this is a change that needs to be well-timed and again, that voters should be the center of the conversation. The whole reason we had an attempt to repeal the mail-in voting was because we didn't take it to the voters. So I don't want to have us make that mistake twice. And also, it just feels like when this question isn't quite settled at the state level, again, I'm 100% in favor of ranked choice voting at the state and federal elections, but I feel like it's still in flux. Let's let the state settle out. We've got so much that are big fish to fry right now, and I would prefer that we just put a pause on this until we have a little more clarity at the state level. And one final comment, I feel like we're a nonpartisan group, and I don't think I'm kind of the mind, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So that's my objection. Thank you.
Ms. Hall, sorry, and I maybe should have stopped you. I mean, appreciate your comments. That seems more about the overall ordinance itself. Are you objecting to this, the amendment that moves away from ranked choice voting for the school board and multi?
Apologies. Yeah, I'm not opposed to this.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, I should have flagged that earlier. I had Mr. Kelly and then Mr. Bryson and then Mr. Steiniger.
Thank you. I had similar concerns to Ms. Atkinson about Cascade being an unfamiliar system and ranked choice being implemented on the state level is becoming more and more familiar to our constituents here. I didn't, I guess where I might see issue with this particular approach is that it eliminates ranked choice voting in some cases. And in fact, it would eliminate it in one of my major reasons for wanting to support this overall ordinance, which is myself and Ms. Atkinson were elected 2 years ago in a 10-person race for 2 people. I realized that this might be like a rare case, a rare occurrence where this would happen. But I think that this would be an example of, in that race, I won, I think, with 20% of the votes, and considering that people could vote for 2 people, that's about 60% of Juneau basically voting against me. I think that people should be elected to the assembly with a clear mandate from the people in all cases. And as a matter of principle, I think I oppose any sort of first past the post approach to voting. I prefer that we would have ranked choice voting in all of our elections, as I've specified in my own amendment. So to have the opportunity to be able to present my own amendment to you, which I think would allow ranked choice voting for all elections, including when somebody resigns, including in school board races, I will object to this ordinance or to this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Bryson.
Yes, I was just looking for some clarification. In a multi-seat race, which I think Mr. Kelly was just talking about, where there are multiple people for 2 seats, which is the scenario that Juneau gets to get multiple candidates, if it's only one seat, if you look back at the last 12 or 13 elections, one seat has one or two candidates in it. It's the races that have a first and a second place, like a District 2 3-year term and a District 2 1-year term, which was the race that I was in. How would ranked choice voting work in a scenario like that? Or am I understanding that ranked choice voting wouldn't take place if there were 2 seats available? Could somebody maybe clarify that answer to me, how it would work in a 2-seat race?
Madam Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson, and I'll let Ms. Atkinson correct me if I'm wrong, but there would be no change to 2-seat races, and there would be no change to school board races. So it only would apply to 1-seat races.
Excellent. Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you, that's correct, but I will just add that there's someone on this dais currently that in the last couple of years was running for a single seat and had about 5 people running for it. So it's not unheard of. Ms. Hall. So not unheard of, and I will just point out that with ranked choice voting, I think there's a chance it might become more common for a single seat race to have more than 1 or 2 candidates. Thank you.
Mr. Steininger.
Thank you, and I'm going to speak in support, of course, of the amendment I co-sponsored. But I want to kind of address sort of the process of getting to it a little bit, because I hope it makes it clearer why we're putting forward this amendment, and thank the clerk's office for the amount of time that they spent trying to figure out how to mesh the concept of ranked choice voting with some of our block voting and our multi-seat elections. And I say the time that they spent because to understand the way that multi-seat ranked choice voting actually worked, it took like a 15-minute walk on the docks with our elections clerk, Ms. Hirsch, for her to kind of walk through how the mechanisms of all of it worked. And by the end of that walk, I understood it, but don't think I could totally explain it to my parents, which for me is a bit of a litmus test for these sorts of things. And so at the end of the day, while I'm like, oh, there might be some mathematical or political science benefits here or there to some of these mechanisms, they're completely outweighed on the multi-seat races by the difficulty in understanding how that count works, whether it's cascade or transference. They both have their pros and cons, and block voting is not perfect. I'm not trying to say that block voting is perfect either. It's just, it doesn't have, the others have kind of more flaws, I guess, in their understandability than block voting has. I'm very curious to have the conversation over Mr. Kelly's next amendment that would, maybe try to help address this in a different way. But I think with multi-seat races, if we're trying to help, the people that are voting understand what they're voting on, people understand single seat ranked choice voting. It would be very hard to get them to understand this multi-seat ranked choice voting.
Thank you, Mr. Steininger. Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Because I feel like Mr. Kelly and Ms. Atkinson, Mr. Steininger's amendments are, you can't have both their options. Would it be appropriate for me to ask Mr. Kelly a question now, or should I wait on his amendment?
That's a really good point. I guess. Madam Chair, unless there's a reason, I mean, it's fun. I'm fine with it, but tell me if I'm like highly out of order or something. I don't know.
I would defer to the chair on how you want the conversation to go, but it does cause a bit of a procedural quagmire to vote on one and then have potentially the other one. So it may make sense to understand what Mr. Kelly is proposing and why, so people can have an informed vote on the First Amendment.
Very good. Go ahead, Ms. Wall.
Well, maybe if we're going, I'll ask Mr. Kelly this question, and he can also maybe give us a snapshot into his thinking. Looking at your amendment, Mr. Kelly, I see how both groups are trying to solve the same problem, and I appreciate you guys tackling that issue that people brought up about cascading voting. But in your version, Mr. Kelly, is it true that, for like, let's say you had a 4-person school board race. In the past, all 4 people were basically running against each other and there'd be 3 seats open. In your option, would they all have to kind of pick seats to be running in? So you'd have like less competition? Is that a correct interpretation of what could happen?
Through the chair, yes.
And I guess I'll ask one. I mean, it essentially is everyone starting in the next year's election, if you're running for school board or assembly or mayor, you would have to say what seat you are. Hence, there would just be single seat races that would then all have ranked choice of voting applied to them.
Essentially, unless there's a resignation, though, you don't really choose the assembly seat unless it's a difference between a district or an area one.
But in school board, people could choose, any of the different
Correct,
seats.
yeah.
Very good. Ms. Atkinson.
I mean, if there are other questions, I can wait, but I can wrap up and maybe address why I prefer this solution to Mr. Kelly's, if that would be helpful.
Sure.
I'll just say that in terms of why we went this route instead of Mr. Kelly's route, which I agree would be ideal, and we would all rather have the same kind of voting for everyone on the ballot, which we don't currently have. So keeping it block voting is not really a change in that we have 2 different types of voting on the ballot already. But the problem with designating seats is that if you are a school board member and there's an empty seat and 3 people in 1 seat, the way you switch from 1 seat to another, you have to get a whole new petition that has the seat you want and get it re-signed, which makes sense if you are an assembly member switching from like a District 1 seat to an area-wide seat. But because there's no actual real difference between a school district seat A or school district seat B, it's just a real administrative issue, and it doesn't actually it's a problem. It doesn't actually do anything substantive, and I worry that could result in an empty seat and 2 competitive seats, for instance. And that's a concern that, especially since we saw like just this year, a school board member candidate submit their application on the deadline and be confirmed after the deadline had passed. So I think that's a real concern, and that's the reason I'm not able to, I didn't go with that direction and instead went with keeping block voting, which, while I prefer ranked choice voting, block voting is familiar. We already two different types of voting on our ballot, and it doesn't cause those problems that Mr. Kelly's solution does.
Your response, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. And I do remember Ms. Atkinson raising that question before, and the way I didn't specifically outline it in my amendment, but I think it could be outlined in future amendments. I think it's theoretically possible to contemplate getting rid of the 25. I mean, it seems pretty arbitrary to have the 25-person requirement. I think maybe we could really to apply for state senate, which is even larger than the city and borough of Juneau. I don't believe you require 25 signatures, and so I kind of wonder why you require it here. Of course, that's not the issue we are discussing. There's probably other ways we could address this as well. But I feel like really this does produce perhaps more of an administrative burden on the person running. But my real priority for this is really giving choice to the voters, making sure that their choice is what is represented on the ballot. I guess that is to say, I would be in support of making it easier for candidates to shift races as well.
Possible amendment, and we take action on this later. All right, we have an amendment. Mr. Bryson, excuse me. Go ahead.
No comment, sir.
Oh, no comment. Oh, okay. Very good. We have an amendment with objection. Ms. Hendricks, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. For Ms. Atkinson and Mr. Steininger's amendment to amend ordinance 2025-13, an ordinance amending the election procedures code to include general procedures for ballot counting related to ranked choice voting for assembly single-member races. Ms. Atkinson,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Steininger,
Yes.
Ms. Wall,
Yes.
Ms. Hughes-Candies,
Yes.
Mr. Bryson,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
No.
Deputy Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries 7 yeas and 1 nay.
Thank you, Ms. Hendricks. We are back now to the main motion. Was there objection to the main motion, Ms. Hall?
As stated earlier, I think the voters should have the opportunity to weigh on a very important issue affecting our elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. If we're just commenting on the main motion here, I'm going to try something.
Deputy Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. I would amend the motion to move it to the August 18th regular assembly meeting for additional public hearing, and then to the November 4th regular assembly meeting for action. My rationale is that we're getting closer to the election. I know Ms. Atkinson worked very hard to keep it further away from the election. I think for a good reason, to keep it so people understood. It's not till the next time, not get people confused. I'm slightly concerned with that. I also really do want people to focus in on the ballot measures that are on the ballot at this time. So my goal is to just say we can deal with it in November once we're past the election. So again, hopefully to eliminate confusion and allow the voters to focus on the things that I would like them to focus on. So.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Smith. Objections? Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the intent of Mr. Smith's amendment. I would just say that while I don't support bringing this to an advisory vote, and I'll talk more about that when we get to the underlying motion, but I do think it's really important that we bring the public along and that the public has a chance to participate and be involved in this process. And I worry that delaying makes, and it allows it time for it to be forgotten and to kind of spring it upon the public later. So my concern is I want to keep it moving while it has momentum, while the public is aware that we're considering it, and while they're have energy and want to be involved in that process. And by delaying it, we kind of, let that peter out. And I worry that we lose public involvement, and that's not what I want. I don't think that a direct vote is the way to do it, but I do want to be sure that we get a lot of public participation and public input. So I would not want to delay it any further than we already have.
Ms. Hughes-Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. I just am objecting for purposes of a comment to say I'm supportive of this idea. It had been my intention to vote against the original motion. I appreciate some of what Ms. Hall is saying. Personally, I'm generally not a fan. Well, I'm not generally not a fan. I would say things that go to advisory vote, you want to be, really mindful about why you're doing it and what you gain from it, because I do believe what Ms. Atkinson said, when you're elected, you're elected to make decisions, so you can't punt every decision back to the public. So I'm not sure that this needs to go to an advisory vote, but my spidey senses feel like there is just a lot in motion and there's a lot on the ballot, and this just feels like too much change is going to get lost in the noise. So I wouldn't want that. And I will also say I'm a huge supporter of ranked choice voting. I think it's great at the state and federal level. So if I felt like Juneau is like, heck yeah, we want it at the local level too, I'm definitely open to being supportive of it. But right now it just feels too soon. And that would have been my comment in objecting. So here's an idea that gets more public comment, kicks it down the road a little bit, buys me more time to get out there and beat the streets, hear from the public. So I'll support this motion.
Any additional questions or comments on the amendment? I'm going to throw my 2 cents in here. I have never personally asked for any topic to be an advisory vote until tonight. And the only reason why this entered into my mind as an advisory vote, because asking people to vote on how they're going to vote, there's an appropriateness to that. And I'm glad Ms. Hall mentioned the Voting Rights Act, because this isn't just like, we just covered a tougher topic, previous assembly meetings, tough topics. We don't kick the can. So I didn't see asking for an advisory vote the same as punting, because this assembly does stuff that previous assemblies have not done, because we don't kick the can. I wanted to have that 2 cents in there. There's some nuance of asking people to vote on how they want to vote in the future. Something just resonates with me there. I'll leave my comments in that. We have I'm sorry, Mr. Steiniger, your questions or comments?
Thank you. And I was just wondering, I think I might have had a little bit of an audio glitch, if Deputy Mayor Smith could repeat his motion for me. Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My motion was to amend the motion to say it would go to the August 18th Assembly meeting for public hearing due to some of the reasons that, go to the August 18th Assembly meeting for public hearing, and then be moved to the November 4th Assembly meeting for action.
Thank you.
So we have an amendment. We have objection. Are there any additional comments or questions on the amendment? Ms. Hendricks? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll on the amendment from Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. For the amendment to amend Amendment 1 to bring this ordinance,
No.
apologies, to amend the main motion to bring the ordinance to the August 18th for public hearing and the November 4th regular assembly meeting for action.
Madam Clerk, I'm really sorry. I just looked at the calendar and it's actually November 3rd. Sorry.
So we have a clarification on that, Clerk Hendricks.
Thank you. Correction to the August 18th for public hearing and November 3rd assembly meeting for action, regular assembly meeting for action. Deputy Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Adkisson.
No.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Ms. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. Steininger.
No.
Ms. Wall.
Yes.
Ms. Hughes Candies.
Yes.
Mr. Bryson.
Yes.
Motion carries 6 yeas, 2 nays.
All right. Now we are on to, excuse me. Gosh, out of practice. We are back to the main motion as amended. And is there objection? Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Chair Smith. I'm glad we're extending this to get some more information, but I'm definitely I think when we first started this conversation and to me, it was kind of a slam dunk. It was, people support ranked choice voting. We'll just do the same thing as the state does, and move forward with it. And I think the changes we made tonight are good ones, given what we've learned and kind of thought about. But I just feel like, I'm feeling similarly to Miss Hall and Miss Candies that this might not be where we want to put our focus and our energy right now, given the state of various other things. So, I'm just feeling like this isn't a priority for me, given everything going on. I support ranked choice voting. I think it would be good in the municipal elections, but it does affect all of our voters, and so it's a big issue. And I don't know whether I'd rather a advisory vote or not, but to me, this I try to prioritize, and this kind of no longer is up there for how I want to spend my political and social capital. So I'll vote no on moving it forward, but certainly gonna if we keep if this moves forward, I'll keep having conversations and keeping an open mind on it. Thank you.
Ms. Hall, Mr. Kelly. Oh, yeah, no, I did say thank you, Ms. Wall. There's Mr. Kelly. Yeah, I know they do.
Thank you. I will speak in support of this motion. I think this does make us one step further in empowering our voters and really making sure that their wishes are represented. I think it's very important that I think choosing how we elect, while we do have a lot going on, like while choosing how we elect people, setting the environment for how people are elected, I think is important, because there's one I think one aspect that Ms. Atkinson might have touched on, but I'm not sure. But one of the one of the reasons that I support ranked choice voting and why I support spending time on it now is that one of the benefits is that people are incentivized with this form of voting to run on the issues and to not necessarily run against each other. And I think creating that sort of environment is very much worthwhile, because while we have a lot of very tough decisions that we are making tonight and that we're making at other meetings, future assemblies are also going to have those kinds of decisions. And we want to make sure that we have a collaborative and continue to have a functional assembly in the future. So I support this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Ms. Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just add, I supported that amendment. I think that made it better. I supported the Atkinson-Steiniger amendment. I think that made that better. I like this plan better than doing it faster. But I feel like I love getting good reminders from you all. I love when someone on this body says something and I'm like, oh yeah, thank you for putting me back on course. So Ms. Wall's comments about, where we focus our time and what is a priority, what is not, where we focus our social capital or public capital, however you want to think about it. To me, I think is a great reminder, because I love all the work that's been done on this, and I think it's good, and I don't think it's not that we couldn't pick it back up at a later date. But for me at this time, I do think that's that weird spidey sense that tells me something about this is not the right time, given so many other moving pieces. So I'll be a no vote as well.
I'll just comment that also I'll support the motion. You know, I hear some of these comments. We have a lot going on. We can chew and walk. Wait, we can. We can chew bubble gum and walk at the same time. I can't talk and think at the same time. And to me, you know, it's a change that I think people can understand. It hasn't been so weird in recent elections, but I remember times where it has, and I've, you know, I will confess, I've had to make a call where I've asked people to say, if you run, it could alter the style of the race in a way that I think would not be in line with your values. And that is not a pleasant conversation or something I'm happy to have to do. But that can happen, and ranked choice voting eliminates that and just allows more people to run with more ideas, more discussion, more debate, better for democracy. And I think the way we do this is going the way it's currently set up. It's pretty straightforward. It's changing one style of race. The other ones remain the same. And I think it's a step in the right direction. Who knows? Mr. Kelly's amendment may be the step later, but it's a small step in one style of race. And I'll be supporting the motion. Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know I've talked a lot, but I just couldn't help myself. Got to say a few more things. I very much hear that we have a lot on our plate. You know, I think this assembly always has a lot on their plate. There's never a time that we don't have a lot of things we're working on, and I'm very sympathetic to that. I will say that we have already spent a lot of time and energy on this. It's not that stopping today means we don't expend energy or work on it, because I think staff and members on this body, and including myself, but not just me, have worked on this, and we've gotten it together to a point that I feel like it's much better than where it started, and that was a collaborative effort by the body and by staff. I hear people on the advisory vote, and I understand it's not as simple as representative democracy. If this were a completely new election idea that people in this city and this state had never heard of, then I would agree that it's a lot to take on unilaterally. But the fact is, it's familiar, and it's something that this community has supported and continued to support once it had been implemented and they used it. It wasn't just some foreign thing that they supported once, they've supported it multiple times. And in terms of advisory vote means it won't get repealed. The state voted together to implement ranked choice voting, and there's been multiple repeal efforts for a thing that the majority of Alaskans supported. So I don't think that that's a valid argument. I think that even if we had an advisory vote, it would be vulnerable to a repeal because to a repeal effort rather, because that is just sometimes how these things go. And if we want to wait for the state, I would say that for the state to settle, I would say that I put this forward not to emulate what the state is doing, but because I think this is a better voting method and it will be really good for Juneau. And I would still continue to support it if it were no longer at the state level. And I also think the state will probably never settle and that we will be seeing repeal efforts in the next 2 years for who knows how long. So I think that this is a good time because this is something we're thinking about and that Juneau is supporting, and we've already put a lot of effort and time into it. So if people don't like it because they don't like ranked choice voting, then I understand that. I encourage you to vote no, but I don't think that that not wanting to spend time or thinking that the state question isn't settled are reasons to vote against it. So that's all I will say, and I would encourage your support.
Thank you, Ms. Atkinson. Mr. Steininger.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Smith, you kind of touched on, one of the reasons that I am so in support of this, that notion that there are occasionally kind of influence or pressure on candidates to drop out of races because they're ideologically similar people in a race, and that fear of splitting vote. And I've, seen it happen in my history of voting. And I've seen and heard from individuals who have been received pressure, not to enter into the civic engagement of running for office for fear that they might split a vote. And rather than having, the voters of Juneau make that decision of who best ideologically represents them, it's happening, in other venues through, social pressure to ask somebody to drop out of a race. And I think that this moves in a direction where that decision happens more in the ballot box and more by the voters in Juneau, and less through that kind of social pressure that advantages those that are more organized in pressuring who to run than organized in looking at the ideologies that Juneau really wants to put, forward to represent itself. And, I've seen that in the past where, you can, in our current system, end up in a situation where a vote gets split between two very ideologically similar candidates who have little bits of nuance between them, and a candidate who may not necessarily represent what the majority wants is one elected. And I do think that that's something that this system will serve to help. It will serve to help avoid some of that kind of back end gamesmanship, if you will, and help it be just a pure question of who best represents you and who amongst your best represents you. And if it's two people, you can rank them 1 and 2 or 2 and 1 or however you want. And that's why I've been, supporting this effort to move through. I think we've made a lot of good, positive changes in the understandability through the amendment process on this ordinance. And I'm looking forward to hearing further public comment at our next assembly meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Steininger. Ms. Hall.
And I will say, yes, we have spent a great deal of time and energy on it. We have, but that doesn't change the fact that we're changing the way we vote. And I feel like we respectfully owe it to our voters to allow them to come along with us and not just do it for them. And with that, I'll maintain my objection.
Thank you. We have a motion with objection. Ms. Hendricks, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. To amend Ordinance 2025-13, an ordinance amending the Election Procedures Code to include general procedures for ballot count related to ranked choice voting as amended. Ms. Atkinson.
Yes.
Ms. Wall.
No.
Mr. Bryson.
Yes.
Ms. Hall.
No.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Steininger.
Yes.
Ms. Hughes Scandies.
No.
Deputy Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries 5 yeas and 3 nays.
Thank you, Ms. Hendricks. To our next agenda topic, verbal update on Burns Building City Hall move.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. I have some great news. I apologize that I wasn't able to provide you a memo in the packet, but I've been in negotiations with both the Permanent Fund Corporation and their real estate holding company, L&B Corporation, at the end of the week. So that's why I don't have anything in writing for you. You authorized me to go forward and negotiate, so I think I've got some terms and conditions that I'd like to present to you that I think are favorable, that I would be presenting at the next, via ordinance at the next meeting. So just want to talk a little bit about that process. If you recall, we had an appraised value of the 2 floors of the Burns building that came in at $9.3 million. We submitted a letter of interest to the corporation and the real estate firm for that amount. They responded with a counter, but a serious counter. They actually spent a lot of time and effort to draw up a letter of interest with lots of current terms and conditions and information about how the condo association would work. So a lengthy legal response, not a back of the napkin response, which really moves our conversation forward. However, they remain on the $12 million price point. And one of the big concerns that the corporation has expressed with kind of this long-term partnership with the city and borough of Juneau is our commitment to maintaining our facilities and keeping them to the high status that their office space is accustomed to. Now, of course, each tenant would be, or each member of the association would be responsible for our own space. So this is more about the shared spaces. And I really empathize with their position because it's not, not that we don't, respect our space, but it's that oftentimes when money is short, investments in capital expenditures can become the thing for a political body that falls by the wayside, right? When you're like, hey, we could just postpone this another few years because we don't have the capital. So that is something that they were very concerned about. And so part of their counter to us was also to maintain control of the facility. And so we were able to discuss those terms and really talk through kind of assuaging some of the concerns that they have about maintaining the facility to a certain standard. And so we don't have a final letter of interest, but we've got some essential terms and conditions, and that would be a condo association with 50-50 control so that we are able to, if there are any, disputes, we'd have a mechanism for resolving those disputes within the condo association where the city has equal footing. Also making sure that, the members of that association are staff level, manager, or our designee. I do want to mention another piece of the condo association would be pretty hefty dues. The dues proposed, and you've heard this number before, are $650,000 a year. And the reason for that is not only does it cover, operations and maintenance, but we would be covering our long-term expenditures too. So when you look at that number, it becomes a lot more palatable when you think about it like a business plans for depreciation and plans for their capital expenditures. The other piece that we were able to come to an agreement on is that we would pay the $9.3 million in, which is the appraised value, but $2.7 million of that would go into a sinking fund for major capital improvements that the condo association would have control over. So that piece basically assures that if we have an unexpected major maintenance project, we are not going to be coming back to a future assembly, right? Because it's not about this assembly, it's not even about this manager, it's about looking out for the future, that there would be that funding source that would gain interest and be available for the association. So those are kind of the essential terms and conditions that I would bring you back via ordinance. I do want to just remind people briefly about how much our situation has changed. Though we've been talking about moving into the Burns building for what feels like an eternity, our leasing situation has changed somewhat. We've moved out of the Municipal Way building, and those employees have a little bit scattered to the wind. We have IT out at the Fish House in Auk Bay, which is only problematic when it's quite windy and the building sways a lot for those employees. But it is problematic because they're very far from the rest of the city and rest of that staff. Though we own that building, we do pay Docks and Harbors $80,000 to lease that space. So can't really count it as like savings if we weren't occupying that space because Docks and Harbors still, of course, has to pay for that space. But so that's a new iteration. A new iteration that also wasn't part of our office space scenario when we started this conversation was use of the old dairy building. That's the JSD admin building. And we have Parks and Rec department there and also a number of finance employees there as we're just busting at the seams at City Hall and trying to absorb all those office spaces. That facility is something we plan to keep. It's actually a nice facility, even though it is called the old dairy building because it was a former dairy. It's in relatively good shape, serves our purpose as well, and allows a little bit of a release valve for trying to shoehorn, 160 employees into 2 floors of the Burns building. All that being said, when you run the numbers, it is still better to own our space than to lease our space. Marine View continues to be very difficult, just from a health safety perspective. It has 5 active leaks in it as we speak. Today, in fact, there was, people were working part-time there because the water was shut off today, and we weren't able to provide the porta potties and the hand washing stations that we are required to. So a lot of employees teleworked. We kind of did some shift work in order to keep a skeleton crew on at the permit center. But those are just issues that are continuing to arise. So I wanted to let you know that that's kind of where we are with those negotiations. And I do plan on, there's more work to do because the devil's in the details with the association, with the Permanent Fund Corporation and their firm. But I'm really encouraged that we have something that I can bring you guys. So happy to answer any questions to the extent I am able.
Questions from the Assembly. Ms. Uscandies, then Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Manager Kester, for all this information. I was scribbling as you talked, just so I had something to refer to visually. I guess I would ask what would be the harm and why you would not, since we didn't have anything written in any form for this. And this is, we've been talking about it forever, but it's also a big decision. And as you say, the devil's in the details. Why your plan would not be to put something in writing and bring that to us at a COW versus putting it in an ordinance and bringing it to us at an assembly.
Yeah, I really would like to move quickly. I don't feel like we're moving quickly, but I would really like to be able to button this up because right now we've extended our lease with Marine View for 1 year and would, it's very expensive for us to extend our lease in these short-term increments. And so we get a little bit hammered when we do that. So I'm really trying to enable us to be able to have a commitment, do some design. It's still going to be a year before we can get into the facility. So really thinking about timing of the entire project, which is by far not, we've still got quite a tail on that project.
Quick follow-up.
Go ahead.
So the extension of the Marine View lease, we have another year on that, or when does that end? Because that's exactly what you're bringing up. These are exactly the kind of timing questions that I'm trying to understand why we want to, I know why we want to button it up, but.
Yes, so we extended the lease in the Marine View for 1 year, so July 31st, the fiscal year, and the cost of that was an extra $10,000 a month from what we were paying previously. So these short-term extensions, they just hammer us.
So is that July 31st, 2026? Is that the answer? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you for running through us with the numbers and with the latest terms. I don't have some of the initial numbers that we ran before us in front of me. So I was just kind of wondering specifically about the condo dues. Has that been a significant movement? Were we anticipating about that amount in previous memos, or is this an increase? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The condo due figure we've been using has been consistent through all the conversations. So when we ran an analysis, I think it was almost a year ago, when we were talking about leasing the building or owning the building, it was a 10-year payoff to purchase the building versus leasing it. I did have land manager Blyden rerun those numbers with, we're spending a little bit less in lease revenue because we don't have MuniWay, and it still pencils out to be about 10-year payback. Now, that comparison is the comparison of leasing the Burns building, because at the time that was our conversation, versus purchasing 2 floors of the Burns building. We're spending about $1 million right now to lease different office space around town. That doesn't include the Fish House. But, you know, it's just not adequate. It's not safe space. It's not adequate space. We could do something, and I have definitely put my thinking cap on, you know, anticipating that we may have some breakdown in negotiations on, okay, if this doesn't work, we can't stay with what we're doing. And there's just no scenario where we wouldn't be paying significantly more for new lease situations, new space, different space that would be more inconvenient for not only our employees and city business, but also our constituents. Remember, when you, part of the reason for moving to a consolidated facility is so that our constituents have, you know, better access to all of the city services, better access, you know, parking and things like that.
Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I think Madam Manager said the same thing that I was just thinking, that we're on like version 3. We had a first version, we were trying to purchase a whole building, and we tried to build a whole building, and once that failed, then we were seeing what we could buy. And so we're actually moving right down the plan that both Public Works and this assembly set forth on trying to find a permanent home for City Hall. Manager Kester's efforts are not new. These have definitely been in the works. I wanted to get a clarification from Manager Kester. Did I hear correctly that you were able to negotiate that they were accepting the valuation of $9.3 million as the purchase price, and then accepted the 2.7 as future capital improvements in the building? That would be how they would accept the transaction from us?
Yeah, you are correct. So that means that the assembly would still be needing to come up with that $12 million price tag.
Brief follow-up. Sure. So this is amazing. If you did a business deal and brought something forward like this to a bank, you're getting the deal. Coming into being able to buy a building so that we own it permanently, and we, after the decade, we're not paying for City Hall again, and in not having to pay the $12 million, but being able to use that higher level to reinvest in our own building. We couldn't have, Madam Manager, I don't believe that you could have brought a better deal forward for this assembly to chew on. So I want to publicly thank you, because to me, that's an awesome deal that we got to pay asking price and then have the extra money sit that can be invested in the building. I don't need to hear anything else. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Madam Manager, yeah.
Thank you. I'm just checking the calendar to see if it would be possible to, if the calendar allows. Oftentimes when I want to get your additional discussion, we introduce something and then refer it back to account. And I'm just checking the calendar to see if that that would work. So let's see, we have a September 15th meeting. I'm sorry, 22nd, that's right, because we moved that meeting, and then we have a 29th committee of the whole. So that is also an option for making sure that you can continue that conversation. And then I'll have also, you know, at this moment, I don't have a lot of those devil in the details, and so I would have, of course, more information.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Mr. Sandinger.
Thank you. And Mr. Bryson, you brought up a point about the portion of the purchase price that goes towards capital improvement. Is that capital improvement in terms of, you know, fixing roof issues, windows, kind of building systems things, or is that capital improvement money that we can use to do all the retrofit work that we know needs to be done to the building to make it suitable as a city hall? Like where is the benefit of that capital improvement money going? Or is that a devil in the details type of thing that you'll have to come back with?
Madam Manager.
Those funds would belong to the condo association, so they would not belong to CBJ for allocating for capital improvements. I mean, you can essentially think of it as a third more of the asking price. However, that price doesn't go as profit to the corporation. It is reserved for future capital expenditures. So we would essentially, anyway, I think you understand the value in that.
And a follow-up, I guess. So then and I may have missed, just not having anything to look at, it's a little bit harder. I may have missed, we have the condo association dues, we have the 2 point some odd million dollars going into a capital fund. And I believe you mentioned payments into a deferred maintenance fund in addition to the condo association dues. Is that accurate?
No, the condo association dues would be inclusive of deferred maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kelly?
Thank you. I realize there would also be significant cost in, or maybe it wouldn't be a lot, but there would be cost, I imagine, in setting up that building initially to be suitable for our employees and our needs and a layout that works for us. Is any of that included in the negotiations?
That would be a separate appropriation, so that would be our project to do any improvements to the property. If you recall, we have two scenarios for improvements. One is, and this was about a year ago, this cost estimate was $5.2 million, and that would be to reverse the floor plan to make sure that the kind of muckety-muck offices were in the middle and the cubicles were on the exterior. This is how the Permanent Fund Corporation is laid out. You recall that I included $3.3 million in my budget to do just that, and that was reappropriated by you to go to, I believe it was restricted budget reserve. So I would, and that leaves, gosh, there is still a few $1,000,000 in, of funds left over in our City Hall account after purchase that could be used towards renovations. So I would be asking you to make that decision as well. Do we do the bare bones carpet and paint renovations, or do we do a larger renovation project? And, I would like to be able to give you updated numbers and a little more context to make that decision.
Mr. Steininger?
Yeah, kind of another follow-up to my question. Would the Permanent Fund Corporation also be putting in a proportional amount into that capital improvement fund to match ours, maybe not the exact same amount, but proportional to their condo ownership of the building? Or is it just the expectation that CBJ be making a large lump sum contribution to future maintenance of the building?
Just CBJ.
Are they, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Are they open to something along those lines in terms of the negotiation?
I haven't broached that with them, but I think the reason why I proposed the idea of a sinking fund was because they're, confident that they can come up with their 1/3 of a capital appropriation whenever they would need it, and less confident in our ability. And so this was a way to mitigate that future situation where, hey, we need to replace the roof sooner than we thought, so we're going to need to come up with X million of dollars. I guess I don't share the same, and I don't share the same concerns with the corporation being able to come up with their match, but maybe anyway, that's just not a lens through which I've approached the negotiations.
Mr. Steininger?
Are we okay moving into comments, I guess?
Mr. Kelly, did you have a question?
I did, but then I forgot what it was.
Go ahead, Mr. Steininger.
I guess I just make the comment that that position of kind of trust us, but we don't trust you as a first entry point into a relationship in a condo association is something that gives me just want to say on the record, that gives me a little bit of pause. I'd be more comfortable if it was a kind of mutual thing and less of something where they're making statements about their ability to trust this body in meeting obligations of the city in the future should needs arise. I understand from plenty of experience of seeing maintenance issues be one of the last priorities made by appropriating bodies. I get it. But I just think that coming into an agreement like this should be a little more mutual than that.
Thank you, Mr. Steininger. And I mean, yeah, I guess we can go ahead. We have given the manager direction. And she will bring us back an ordinance, which we'll then be able to discuss and vote on. But sure, let's keep going. Yeah, if we have comments, I'm not totally sure, but we can comment. Let's go. Mr. Kelly.
Okay, I didn't hear a motion yet, so.
There's no need for a motion.
Okay,
That's the thing.
all right.
It's an informational item. So we're going to see an ordinance back before us, which we can then
All right,
discuss.
just one last question then from me. So as a part of this negotiation, actually, I'll wait till us get offline. It's just, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Ms. Usandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Because this is an informational item, I just wish to share direction with the staff. Appreciate you checking the calendar. I personally would appreciate, and I might be alone in this, if when we get to a hammered out legal ordinance that we can look at and something in writing, it would be my preference when that's introduced that it be referred back to the COW. And I say that I appreciate the difficult decision you are in, and I'm not trying to be difficult at this point in the process. But with numbers this high, it would just be an abdication, I think, on our part to just say, cool, sounds good. I'm sure you've hammered out a great deal. Let's talk about it at that body or at that group when this group is more appropriate. So that would be my preference. And I will stop talking if no motion is needed.
Mr. Bryson.
I think I'll be real quick, Mr. Deputy Mayor. When we were looking at an alternative proposal to do City Hall, our price tag was $30 million. We're asking for a $27 million bond. So this $12 million, and we're getting almost the same square footage, or the square footage that we need. This is the appropriate direction that we've been working on since 2022, I believe. So think of that, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Bryson. Just so so we're all on the same page. Madam Manager, tell us again what your plan is for ordinance introduction, and if you want to refer back, if you want it to be referred back to the COW, or if you want us to vote on that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. I feel confident that I have the direction to bring you an ordinance because you've given me the authority to negotiate, yes. But appreciate that you need more deliberation. My plan would be to introduce an ordinance with essential terms and conditions, and then my manager's recommendation can be to refer it to the COW. That'll give you something very tangible to look at and to discuss at the September Committee of the Whole.
Very good, thank you. That sounds good with everyone. Okay. Any further questions or comments on this item? Very good. Moving on to the next item, we have an update on labor negotiations requested to be in executive session. You can see what it's for, and if I could get a motion to bring us into executive session. Mr. Kelly.
I move that the Assembly enter into executive session to discuss collective bargaining negotiations, the immediate knowledge of which would adversely affect the finances of the municipality, and ask for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Seeing no objections from members of the public or the Assembly, we are in executive session. Pardon me, yeah, go ahead.
Question, Deputy Mayor. Do you plan to return to open session?
I don't think we have, unless there's no staff reports, no, okay. Very good, then we will, we do, if we don't need to, I don't need to. Anyone else? Ms. Uscandies?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe I brought something up on the break and I forgot. And I just was hoping, because this is the first meeting that we've had, to my knowledge, since the officer-involved incident, I had meant at this meeting to ask staff for perhaps an update on plans to address this at a future meeting, or just to provide a general update since we're in public session, because I'm sure the community is curious. If that's appropriate right now, I don't know if we could do that before executive session, and I can't, I'm sorry, I'm a junk mind at this point. Up to you.
We did just move into executive session, but I guess we could, I mean, does staff have, are you prepared to share anything? You've put out some statements in recent times, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy to provide an update to the body and the public. Some of it may be, I know you've all been very engaged in this issue, so it might not be all new to you, but important to have that opportunity. So as you know, the officer who was involved in the incident on Wednesday, July 30th, has been put on administrative leave. The JPD has successfully engaged with an external entity for an investigation. We're also doing an internal investigation, and that internal investigation is looking at both, was the use of force appropriate and was it in line with JPD policy? I've heard a lot of questions from the assembly about other kind of policy level pieces. What are our hiring practices? What are our vetting practices? And those are conversations that we've had with Chief Boss, but I fully anticipate this body wanting to engage in. So, I think part of our follow-up from staff level would be to report to you both on the status of those investigations, hopefully the result of those investigations, and give you an understanding of our process for making those decisions, so that you can weigh in on that from a policy level. I do also want to let you know that I have responded to Plinkett and Haida leadership about their request for a meeting on behalf of Mayor Weldon and Deputy Mayor Smith. So hoping to set that up as soon as it is convenient. We've also received a letter from Interim President Joe Nelson of Sealaska Corporation. Very thoughtful letter expressing just similar concerns, and we have responded to that letter as well. Robert and I are will be reviewing that body camera footage. The department is committed to releasing that within 30 days, as is the ordinance that was recently passed by the Assembly. Of course, there is this ongoing investigation, and so preserving that sanctity is important at this point. I do know that Chief Boss has been in contact with the injured man's family. I'm not at liberty to share that status. I know we're all very curious. That's something personal for the family, but I do want you to know that he has reached out. And I think it's fair to say that the Assembly and leadership share the deep concerns of the community about this incident, and that we are taking this seriously. Everyone, every citizen deserves to feel safe in our community. So happy to answer any questions to the extent I'm able to.
Madam Manager.
Thank you so much for that update. Look forward to talking about this and engaging on some of those policy level questions and digging into this a little bit. I'm sure we've all been in conversations with members of the public, so I just wanted to put that on the record that we are having those conversations at staff level, and there are plans to continue to dig in just to assure the public of that.
Thank you, Ms. Uscandies. Yeah, thanks for that. And that may keep us from having to come back now. So now we had the motion to move us into executive session. Seeing no objection to that motion. Christine, what? Ms. Wall, do you need to? Because
Thank you. Thank you. I will let everyone know that I have a conflict when it comes to negotiations with IAFF. And so if we are talking about negotiations with that union, I will step out at that time.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. We're into executive session.
We go to a different link,
I'm
correct?
pretty sure so. Yeah, I'm gonna leave this one.